An emperor once owned a bird whose song could make a grown man weep. So he did the obvious thing. He had it copied in gold, in sapphires and rubies, a perfect mechanical bird that sang the very same song and never got tired and never flew away and never, ever surprised him. And then he threw the real one out the window. This story is different from the others I tell you. Most of the parables on this channel are old beyond knowing, passed mouth to mouth for 1,000 years before anyone wrote them down. But this one has an author and a date. It was written in the year 1843 in Denmark by a man named Hans Christian Andersen. Andersen called it a fairy tale. He set it in an imagined china, a porcelain china, a china of his own dreaming, which is why the china in this story feels more like a painted vase than a real country. That is on purpose. Andersen was not writing about China. He was writing about something he could see happening all around him, because Andersen lived at the very dawn of the machine age. In his lifetime, the world filled up with marvelous mechanical things, automatons, music boxes, clockwork wonders that could do tirelessly and perfectly what living creatures could only do imperfectly and with effort. And then, not anymore. And Andersen watched the people of his age fall in love with the copies. And he wanted to ask them a question that has only gotten louder in the years since he died. When you can have the perfect copy of a thing, Andersen wanted to ask, why would you ever keep the real one? The emperor of this story had the most beautiful palace in the world. It was built entirely of fine porcelain, so delicate that the gardeners had to walk carefully so as not to chip the flowers. And the garden stretched so far that even the gardeners did not know where it ended. Where it ended, in fact, was a deep wood that ran down to the blue sea. And in that wood lived a small, plain, brown-grey bird, a nightingale. And the nightingale sang. It sang so beautifully that the fishermen who came out at night to lay their nets would stop their work just to listen. Travellers who passed through the wood wrote of the bird in their books, and the books travelled all over the world, and in every one of them the same line appeared. The most beautiful thing in the emperor's whole empire is the nightingale. And one day, one of these books reached the emperor himself in his porcelain palace at the centre of his enormous garden. And the emperor read that the most beautiful thing in his entire empire was a bird in a wood at the edge of his own grounds. And the emperor was astonished, because the emperor had never heard of it, had never heard it, had lived his whole life a short walk away from the most beautiful thing he owned, and had never once noticed it was there. The emperor sent his whole court to find the bird and bring it to the palace. This was harder than it sounds. The grand courtiers of a porcelain palace do not, as a rule, know their way to a damp wood. They mistook a cow's moo for the nightingale. They mistook the croak of frogs for the nightingale. In the end, it was a kitchen girl, a poor child who actually walked through the wood each evening, who led them to the real bird. "Little Nightingale," called the kitchen girl, "our emperor would so like to hear you sing." And the nightingale said simply, "My song sounds best in the green wood." But it came anyway, and perched in the great hall, and it sang for the emperor. And here is what happened. The emperor of all that porcelain, the master of that endless garden, the man who owned every beautiful object that money and power could gather into one place, the emperor sat on his throne, and he listened to the small grey bird, and the tears ran down his face. He did not weep because he was sad. He wept because the song was so beautiful and so true that it reached some part of him that nothing he owned had ever once managed to touch. And the emperor said it was the highest honour he could give. "The nightingale shall have my golden slipper to wear around its neck." And the nightingale said gently, "I have seen tears in an emperor's eyes. That is treasure enough." A nightingale's song comes from the heart. It cannot be paid for in gold. The nightingale stayed at the palace. It was given a golden cage. It was given 12 servants, each of whom held a silken ribbon tied to its leg, so that when the nightingale was allowed out for a little flight, it was never truly free. The whole court adored it. It became the fashion to whisper in imitation of its trills. The nightingale was not happy, but it sang anyway every day, and the emperor still wept, and for a while all was well. And then, one day, a great parcel arrived at the palace. It was a gift from the Emperor of Japan. On the outside of the parcel was written a single word, Nightingale. And inside the parcel was a bird, but not a living one. It was an artificial nightingale, a mechanical bird, a masterpiece of the clockmaker's craft. It was made of solid gold, and it was set all over with sapphires and rubies and diamonds. When you wound it up with a little key, it could sing one of the real nightingale's songs, perfectly, flawlessly, while its jewelled tail moved up and down and glittered with silver and gold. And the court was enchanted. Now the courtiers cried, "They must sing together. What a duet it shall be!" But the two birds could not sing together, because the real nightingale sang in its own way, freely, differently each time, and the jewelled bird sang always the same, strict, even, identical, like a music box, which is exactly what it was. The court played the jewelled bird 33 times in a row, and it sang the very same song 33 times, and the court was not tired of it. They would happily, they said, have heard it 33 more. The music master was especially pleased. "You see," he announced to the court, "the trouble with the real nightingale is that you can never tell what it will sing next. But with the jewelled bird, everything is settled. You can open it up, You can explain it. You can show exactly how each note is made. And while the whole court crowded around the marvellous jewelled bird, turning its key, admiring its gems, praising how perfectly it never changed, not one single person in all that hall was looking at the real nightingale. So the real nightingale did the only thing a real nightingale can do. It looked at the open window. It looked at the green wood far away, and it spread its plain brown wings, and it flew out the window and away home. And when the court finally noticed that it was gone, they were not heartbroken. They were offended. They called the real nightingale ungrateful, a traitor, and the emperor declared the real bird banished from the empire forever. No matter, said the court, we still have the better bird. And they wound up the jewelled nightingale, and it sang for the 34th time exactly the same. 5 years passed, and for 5 years the jewelled bird sang in the porcelain palace. It was given a place of honour on a silk cushion beside the emperor's own bed. It was given a title, High Imperial Bedside Singer. It was ranked in the order of the court, number 1 on the left side, because the emperor considered the left side, the side the heart is on, the side of greater honour. The whole empire came to know the jewelled bird's one song by heart. They could sing along. They liked that they could sing along. A song you can predict perfectly is a very comfortable song. And then, one evening, as the jewelled bird sang its very best, and the emperor lay in bed listening, something inside the bird went. A spring broke, a wheel spun loose, the music ran down with an ugly, grinding sound, and the jewelled nightingale stopped. The emperor leapt from his bed and sent for his physician. The physician could do nothing. They sent for the watchmaker, and the watchmaker took the bird apart, gear by jewelled gear, and at last he put it back together, and he gave his expert verdict. The wheels were worn. They could not safely be replaced. From this day on, the watchmaker said, the precious bird must be played only once a year, and even that would be a strain. Once a year. The perfect, tireless, unsurprising bird, the one they had chosen because it would never tire, had, in the end, worn out. Another 5 years passed, and the emperor fell ill. He fell so ill that the whole court believed he was dying, and a new emperor was already being chosen. The palace grew quiet. Cloth was laid down in the corridors so that no footstep would disturb him, and the old emperor lay alone in his great bed in the cold moonlight, and he felt a terrible weight settle on his chest. He opened his eyes, and sitting on his chest, looking at him with 2 hollow eye sockets, was Death. And Death had been busy. All around the emperor's bed, in the folds of the velvet curtains, strange, pale faces were peering out, some lovely, some horrible. They were the emperor's own deeds, his whole life. Every good thing and every cruel thing he had ever done, crowding in to watch their master go. and the faces whispered to him, "Do you remember this? Do you remember that?" And the emperor, gasping under the weight of death, cried out, "Music! Bring me music! Beat the great drum so I cannot hear what they are saying." And the emperor turned his head desperately toward the silk cushion beside his bed, where the jewelled nightingale sat. "Sing," he begged it, "sing! I gave you gold, I gave you jewels, I hung my own golden slipper about your neck. Sing to me now." But there was no one to wind the key, and the jewelled bird, the perfect bird, the better bird, the bird that had cost an empire's treasure, sat on its cushion in the moonlight and was completely, utterly silent. And then, through the open window, in the cold and the dark, there came a song. It was the real nightingale. The small, plain, banished bird had heard, in the way that real things somehow hear, that its old emperor was sick and afraid and dying. And it had flown all the way back, and it had landed on the branch outside his window, and it sang. It did not sing for gold. It had refused his gold long ago. It did not sing the same strict song as the jewelled bird. It sang freely, truly, from the heart, a song of the quiet green wood and the cool churchyard, where the white roses grow and the grass kept fresh by the tears of those who are left behind. And as the nightingale sang, something extraordinary happened. Death, sitting on the emperor's chest, lifted his hollow head to listen. And the song was so beautiful and so true that Death himself began to long for his own garden. "Go on, little nightingale," said Death. "Go on singing." And the nightingale sang on, and with each verse Death grew gentler. "Give me back my golden crown," the nightingale asked, and Death gave it back. "Give me back the emperor's sword, give me back his banner." And for each verse of that true, freely given song, Death handed back one more piece of the dying man's life, until, at last, Death himself, longing only for his own cool garden, drifted out of the window like a cold white mist, and was gone. The real bird, the plain bird, the bird he had thrown away, that was the song that Death stopped to hear. The emperor fell into a deep, healing sleep. And when he woke, the morning sun was shining through the window, warm upon him, and he was well. Not one servant had come back yet. They all still believed he was dead. But the nightingale was still there on its branch, singing. "Thank you," said the emperor, "you heavenly little bird. I banished you from my empire, and still you came back, and you sang the death away from my bed. How can I ever repay you?" And the nightingale said, "You have already paid me. I drew tears from your eyes the first time I sang for you. I shall never forget that. Those tears are the jewels that gladden a singer's heart." And then the nightingale told the emperor the terms, the only terms on which it would help him. I will come, it said. I will sit on the branch outside your window in the evenings, and I will sing to you. I will sing of those who are happy and of those who suffer. I will sing of the good and the evil that happen all around you and that are kept hidden from you. For a little singing bird flies far to the poor fisherman, to the peasant's roof, to everyone far away from you and your court. But you must promise me one thing, said the nightingale. Tell no one that you have a little bird who tells you everything. And do not try to keep me. Do not cage me. Do not hang gold about my neck. I must be free to come and free to go. I cannot build my nest and live in a palace, but I will come when I will come, and what I bring you freely will be worth more than anything you could ever lock in a cage. There is one last thing to know about this story. We tell it, usually, as a story about a foolish, vain emperor long ago who could not tell gold from a bird. But remember who wrote it and when. Andersen wrote it at the dawn of the machine, and he did not write it about an emperor. He wrote it about us, about the choice he could already see every person beginning to make. Because we are all offered every day the jeweled bird, the copy that never tires, the version of a thing that is more convenient than the real thing, the friend who is easier to text than to visit, the song you can predict perfectly and sing along to and never be surprised by, the voice that tells you only what is comfortable to hear. And the jeweled bird is not evil. Andersen is very clear about that. It is beautiful, it is clever, it is, in 100 ways, genuinely better. It is only missing one thing. It cannot surprise you. It cannot grow. It will not fly to the poor fisherman's roof and bring back the truth. And on the night that death sits down on your chest, the jeweled bird, the perfect copy, the convenient thing, will have no one to wind its key, and it will sit on its cushion and be silent. So tonight, friend, go and find the real bird, the plain one, the one you cannot predict and cannot cage and cannot own. Do not hang gold around its neck. Just open the window, because only the real song, the true one, the free one, the one given from the heart, is the song that death himself will stop to hear.